this broken program that I broke, that I thought I broke, really was telling me a secret truth to the universe. The technique is the Triadic Heart Method. This is the key, the power to manifesting anything related to a specific person. And whether that means it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a business relationship, anything at all, anything that involves another person, this is the key. This is what I have found, and this is what it is. Hi, my name is Joseph Alai. Welcome to my channel. And today I have something crazy to share with you. So as you probably know, if you've watched my recent videos, I've been building this deep learning manifestation system that can predict what works and what doesn't work, or discover new stuff effectively now. And that's not even the crazy part, right? So what I've done effectively, just so that I get that out of the way, is I've taken hundreds of thousands of manifestations, not only for myself, but you guys as well, who have submitted them to me and scoured the internet. I'm a software engineer, okay? If you don't know about this, watch my video, Deep Learning Solves Manifesting, and you'll find out all about it, right? It's effectively a new deep learning AI with manifesting, run by real experiments from manifestation. But so effectively what happened is I thought I broke it, right? I've been working on it for years, and it's been able to generate accurate manifestation results and predictions up to about 99% accuracy. So like I said, I thought I broke it, and that's where this all begins, because the way that you test any sort of software is you edit it and you make the modifications to the code. And then what you do is, before you run it, you have to feed it an example that you already know the answer to. That way, when it spits out the results, you can compare it to, what the results that you already knew that they were going to be. And that's how you test software, right? So I was inputting this transcript after making some modifications, a transcript from one of my coaching sessions, the manifestation coaching sessions. And then I started getting this error, right? And it was obvious, right? I knew this client, right? She's from the Discord community. We've talked before many times. We've developed a relationship through the Discord, our subscription and stuff. So, in our session, it was very clear, and she knew this and I knew this, and she's a great visualizer, but her manifestations were back and forth. She was manifesting a specific person, but she kept getting a couple steps forward and a couple steps back, or she would keep getting some results and it would keep rewinding. So usually in a case like this, you have to change your assumptions, and you have to imagine the end. Now, that's a very simplistic way to go about this. And if you want more information on your assumptions, and not just there's a very specific approach to observing, finding, reverse engineering, and then modifying your assumptions, which, if you don't do that, you keep manifesting the same patterns over and over again, right? Look at your own life. The things that are patterns, those are your assumptions linked into those. So knowing this was what we talked about in our session. And I knew this was the answer, and this is usually the answer, right? I've been studying manifestation for a long time, for 13 years, 14 years now, tracking them systematically, exhaustively, right? In this stack of journals over here, I always say this, but there's tens of thousands of experiments and results. So it's obvious. You find the common denominators, right? If you've been doing the list method, then you already know that you can get results, you can get manifestations rapidly, and you find the same patterns over and over. But so anyway, I'm feeding in this transcript from that session to my deep learning system. And what it does is it extracts all of the variables. It finds, what they're doing, about their history, based upon the transcript, right? What they've said, what they've done, how long they've been doing it for, what the results are. If they're talking about the relationship, it takes in, about that person, what's been happening, and so on and so forth. And then cross-references it with all the thousands and thousands and thousands of manifestations that have come before, and it can then predict what's going to work based upon what's worked in the past, right? That's how science works. That's how you can predictably gain results. So what I did was I fed it in, and I knew what the results were going to be. It was going to be change assumptions, and it was going to be visualize the end. And usually it can spit back in the app. It spits back a couple bullet points first. Then if you want to go into it, you can look at all the details. So the results come back from the test and it's giving me an error. It's effectively, instead of just saying visualizations and assumptions, it's giving me 3 bullet points. It says visualize the end, change assumptions. And I thought I broke the code. So what I do, given the obsessive nature of any coder's mind, you're going to go in and you're going to figure out, oh my God, what did I do? Right? I was just coding for hours beforehand. I did not know what I could have done wrong. It wasn't even supposed to be a big modification to my software, right? What I'm trying to do when I'm coding is get for a more accurate result so I can predict manifestation even better. You can find better patterns. And whatever I did screwed it up, or at least in my mind. But what ended up happening was not a screw up. It ended up transforming the way I saw manifesting entirety in its whole, in its all. I can't even talk right? So hours go by. I'm looking through the code, literally everything that I had done, I undid. I undid every modification for hours, one by one, and I'm keep getting these same results, and I'm gonna rip my hair out of my head. I'm freaking out. Athena sees me stressed out. I didn't sleep at all, not a single wink, because I thought, what did I do to screw this up? It's been years, all of this, you know what I mean? What would you say? So finally, I open up the log file. I'd already run the software. So what I did was I undid every piece of modification I made and ran the code again, ran the transcript again, same result, 3 things. Visualize the end and I see assumptions. I'm like, what have I done? I go into the log after hours and hours and hours. And I realized I was overlooking what it was saying. It was not saying, visualize the end, change her assumptions. It was saying, visualize the end, change her assumptions, change his assumptions. That's completely different. And that's the earth-shattering perception, because immediately I thought to myself, can that be right? That's got to be wrong. And then I started to look at what it was saying. So what you can do is with this software is, like I said, it breaks apart all of the figures of speech that they use word by word. It assigns each value to a variable, and then it searches in the database the other hundreds of thousands of manifestations that it has already dissected before, and so on and so forth, and it finds the connection. So in this case, it had found a new set of common denominators that I had never seen before, that I had overlooked in all of the years that I've been doing this. And it was showing that because the details were there about this person, if this, meaning this specific person of my client, if the specific person not only visualized the end, not only visualized her as changing in her assumptions to change the patterns that she'd been experiencing, but change his assumptions about his relationships, his beliefs. And the problem that I had with this initially, my gut instinct was, yes, but the problem is when you manifest changes in a person, your assumptions always change them back. This is why you don't say to someone, Joseph texts me, Joseph loves me, Joseph is in a relationship with me. Because first of all, these are middles, and these cause individualized, singular manifestations, but not only that never solves the problem, because then Joseph inevitably stops texting me. He stops saying, I love you. He stops whatever else I just said as an example. And so the core and the key to manifesting is always visualize your end, but then change your patterns so that you don't revert back the changes that happen with that person, so that when that person exists, your assumptions changes them. The broad assumptions change the specific manifestations. You need to change. Everyone that I date is always in communication with me. Everyone that I date is in love with me. So it's a broad generalization instead of going specific. So that's automatically, and we've seen this before, I've tested this, the figures have come in many times before with all of the common denominators that you can witness. You don't just want to micro pick different things and specific experiences and change those. You need to change your assumptions in order to get permanent changes in that person. And in fact, changing the assumption makes it so if you say everyone that I'm in love with is in love with me, for example, this broad general assumption, then when you're in love with a person, you don't even have to imagine Joseph's in love with me. Your assumption automatically will reel Joseph in and cause him to love you. So this is how assumptions work. Like I said, watch my video on micro assumptions. If you don't know what I'm talking about here, I give a very thorough breakdown of this. But that is usually what accounts for all success in manifesting. Literally, if I go through my database right now, which I have, and I'll post the graphs, those who change assumptions along with visualizations have a drastically higher ability to manifest their specific person over a person who only visualizes the end and permanency. However, once I got this result, I did a query and I looked into my database and I asked to give me all the examples of people who have changed assumptions of the other person. Now, to me, this isn't even something that I've spoken before. I've never even given this as an insight before. I've never explained this to someone. I've never given it as a technique. There are no techniques that talk about this specifically and why it would be in this way, why the outcomes would be in this way. There's no predictive measures that predicted this before. But what I came to find was in many of the cases that were successful, many of the specific person manifestations, many of the job and wealth manifestations, many things revolving or involving other people, involving other people, that's right? In many cases, you will find that those who had accidentally or with their imaginal acts included broad generalizations about that person would conform. That person would drastically change in rapid succession after you imagined the visualization, changing your assumptions and changing their assumptions. So that leads to an amazing technique, an amazing method brought by an intelligent, someone who's much smarter than I am, and that is this deep learning software. I do not know how long it would have ever taken me to spot this in all of the years that I've obsessed over the manifestations that I've seen. And I am absolutely shocked and amazed. When I brought this up to Athena and I showed her, she also, like, you could see the gears in her mind were ticking and she was trying to put this together. And it was like, bing, oh my God. And then the evidence began to pile up because it also presents back use cases where people have done this. So the technique is the Triadic Heart Method. This is the key, the power to manifesting anything related to a specific person. And whether that means it's a romantic relationship, whether it's a business relationship, anything at all, anything that involves another person, this is the key. This is what I have found in people who have not had results. This is neglected in many cases. Not all the cases. In many cases, it appears to be that people who have been stuck and they have not been able to manifest their specific person in whatever way, shape, or form, in many cases, it appears to be that person has an assumption that has not been talked about in the imaginal act. So this is the core. This is the key. This broken program that I thought I broke, really was telling me a secret truth to the universe. And this is what it is, the Triadic Heart Method. There's three tiers to this, three pillars to the Triadic Heart Method. Similar to the harmonic method, but greater in depth and accuracy based upon the data from all of the manifestations that have come before it that are put into this system. The Triadic Heart Method goes as follows. Number one is you need to define the end. You need to imagine the end. The end is where you begin. Imagine, choose a scenario after you've already received the manifestation, the marriage, the increase of wealth, or whatever it is. It's got to be after the end. You want to choose a scenario not at the end, not the moment when you're receiving it, at a point after that time. That is after the end. You need to have that included in there. I have many videos on this, and I will link one in the description so that you can look at how to craft an imaginal act. That is one of the pillars, one of the tiers of this tripod, this Triadic Heart Method. The second is changing your assumptions. Please watch my video on micro assumptions. This has radically altered many lives of the individuals who have watched it. Just look at the comments in the video itself. You will witness it firsthand just how powerful this is. The way to reverse engineer your reality is drastically simple. It's way simpler than anyone talks about because you're not using a standard modern psychological formula. You're using manifesting, which is the key to the universe. So you effectively look at your reality and you devise or you extract the patterns that have consistently manifested. And when you do that, you can determine, well, if there was a belief that's causing that, what would that belief be? So you generalize. The key is to summarize the experience that you're witnessing, the pattern that you're happening. Everyone's leaving you. That's the assumption. Everyone leaves me. People are cheating on you. Everyone cheats on me. That generalized phrase is what's repeating over and over. And the way these get injected in the first place is not how you might think. It's a simple internal reaction based upon an experience. That could be true or false, meaning the assumption you're making doesn't even have to be true. It could just be a malfunction in your logic and reasoning, but you experience something, you witness an event, and you say to yourself, man, guys always cheat, whatever. That is the assumption. It's not a heartfelt belief. It's not something that you're determined about. In many cases, you're not even aware. It's subconscious. It's not conscious. You shouldn't even be generally aware of this until you do this reversing agent. And when you do that, you will be able to easily say, oh yeah, duh, that is an assumption. That is the pattern. So that is it. And then you change them by imagining, you construct an alternative phrase or statement which would cancel that out. Normally you do that with one or more opposites of that single general negative assumption that you have. You're going to want to rewind that part because it's very condensed with specific instructions. Do not overlook and take that for granted. I use a lot of very specific phrases. This should be analyzed like a workbook instead of just listening passively because the instructions I'm giving you are very dense. I'm just saying that so that you don't skip over this. This is a critical part. And so once you construct those alternative opposite statements, one or more that cancel out that one, you can imagine that. First of all, even writing it down will impress and manifest. Just writing it. Then imagining a conversation will definitely also impress, like between you and a trusted friend, that will manifest, right? And what will happen is a bridge of incidents will unfold. You're not here to convince yourself and force a new belief into your mind and repeat it until you believe it. That's not how manifesting works. That's why in many cases robotic affirmations don't work, or just repetitive phrases where you're not instinctively attempting to use a concrete, specifically made imaginal act to impress it into your subconscious mind. There's a lot of data on that as well. Now, the third, and this is the whole point of this video, is to change the assumptions of the individual. Now, take for an example, the client, the friend, the person who is in in the Patreon, in the Discord, who is very often in our groups that we talk very frequently. And in our, the point of this was when I fed in this transcript of our conversation, of our coaching session that we had, it was able to extract things that were very obvious now. They're very obvious now, but at the time, you could overlook. You could be forgiven for overlooking it because generally what this person is talking about, she's very good at visualizing. She imagines the end, but then he keeps showing effort or keeps coming forward, but then it always resets or goes backwards. So this is clear-cut, obvious. This is assumption work. But when she was talking about him and she was saying how his past relationships always reflect the same patterns and he's not very expressive and he doesn't make a ton of effort in chasing and all of these sorts of things. Well, this was when the deep learning picked up on it. And it was saying, well, you have these clear-cut assumptions, and it went through the checklist, right? The deep learning is smarter than I am. Right. And I mean, I consider myself very obsessive with this sort of process that I undergo, right? Look at the list method. I hope you've been doing it because the results are absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I had someone the other day talk about receiving over 200 items within a couple of weeks. Very powerful. And the reason that's powerful is because you have all this data that you can then reflect on and think about, wow, this manifested, this didn't. I did this thing when I was doing that. I didn't do this thing. I thought this, I felt this, I didn't think this, I didn't feel this, on and on and on. And you can find all of these things that ring true in every single manifestation. So when it comes to something like this, this spotting these standard patterns in this individual who's acting a certain way continuously and who is also acting that way in past relationships. It's the same thing. You change your assumptions to overarchingly change reality. Well, in this case, usually when you change your assumptions, it then includes that person and that person changes. But there is a profound and marked difference when you begin to also alter their assumptions as well. So in this case, they have an avoidant tendency in all of their experiences. They don't chase. They had abandonment issues themselves. So to change his assumptions as well, say it's Joseph, right? Joseph is very secure. Joseph has long-lasting, secure relationships. Joseph, it has a secure attachment style. Joseph always makes continuous communication. And you go on in the same way as I would make assumptions for myself to change everyone and everything in my reality, you then apply the same thing to that person. They are secure, they have long-lasting relationships, everyone is trustworthy in their life, they trust everyone they come in contact with. Whatever the same things you would kind of do for yourself, analyze what's happening with them as well in their lives, find that pattern and adjust and imagine. Now, the thing about this is I recently gave this information to this client. So I don't have her results yet, but in looking at the results, so with my app, the way that it works is I have, as I said before, and watch the Deep Learning Solves Manifesting video that I posted. It really gives an exhaustive breakdown. It's amazing, it's drastic, it's revolutionary, and I'm not just saying that, right? Nothing has ever been done like this before because there's never been a way to have it done before, right? There's never been drastic amounts of data, manifesting data, right? I have hundreds of thousands of stories in and of themselves, meaning successes, failures, intermediary stories, from myself, from clients, from subscribers, from people who aren't my subscribers. I also have a feature in my application that scours the internet and finds other people's stories, successes, and failures. And it accumulates all of this data, breaks it apart, groups it, finds patterns in all of it, and then it can predict by looking at the outcomes that were given, well, this is usually the outcome here, this is usually the outcome there. Well, what I found is looking at this data, there is, in many cases, scenarios where when a person is crafting their imaginal acts about them and their person, about them in the end, what has been finding very successful, and this is the same thing with my custom imaginal acts when I create for people, and I don't even know how I didn't see this before. It's almost in many cases automatic. But some of the reasons they're very powerful is in these custom imaginal scenes that I make for people, so normally when I make scenes, I do short and concise. But in this case, in these custom imaginal scenes, I'll often, because a person gives me their information, I construct beliefs and assumptions combined with the end result. But in many cases, what I'm doing is there's dialogue between them and the person who they're involved with. And there's always a discussion between them, and that person is always, meaning obviously the client themselves, they're the star of the audio that I'm recording for them and the script that I'm making. But whoever the party is involved, there's dialogue between them where the party is discussing changes in their behaviors and assumptions as well, grand total. So not just the end where you're married, but discussing about how they're secure and they love having communication and they're grateful our relationship is perfect communication. Instilling assumptions in the individual themselves and in the specific person. That's the key. That is what has a drastic market change. And the changes come as follows. This is what's generally found. They come faster, the results become more permanent, and they're more guaranteed than any other method. Now, I'm not saying just an imaginal act isn't going to work. In many cases, one single imaginal act works. But if it doesn't, you need to go to the next step, which is assumptions. Assumptions are the current through which the river is flowing. And your manifestation, you want it to go with you in the same direction. But if the current is coming against you, you're going to have a hard time manifesting that thing. Now, in this case, we're taking it a step further, and it's like drastically speeding up as well, that current. So the manifestation happens definitively and speedily. And this is shown in the data. So I have a worksheet along with this that you can follow along. You can see the graphs moreover because there's more data than I can show here, but I'll show you quick glimpses of it. You can look here. Visualization itself shows success, but a recidivism rate, right? Backwards, goes back to the beginning. Then you have assumptions only that will radically change your reality. But if you don't imagine an end, then there's no guarantee that you're going to get an end. So you want to always imagine those together, because when you do that, the results are much more permanent, much more successful and continuous, and also fast than if you just imagine the end. But lastly, watch how fast it is, watch how definite it is, watch how permanent it is when a person adds assumptions related to that person. So the way you can do this is create an imaginal act, then create your assumptions, then create their assumptions. And systematically, one after the other, you just want to imagine these things. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into how long to do it and all that. On all my other videos, I talk about this. So go through my videos. I will link some in the description, but this is the Triadic Heart Method. This is groundbreaking. I'm still kind of thinking how crazy this is to look at all the times I've overlooked this, right? This is what I do. I don't even care as much about objective results as I do about the systematic nature of reality, right? There's obviously patterns, just like there's patterns in everything. We've figured this out. If you've been following along with me, you have figured this out. You have seen how easy manifesting can be. You've done the list method. You're watching how rapid manifestations can come. But now this is a different level. This piece of information that you can change assumptions from another person, this is the key. So I need your results. I need you to tell me specifically after doing this. You need to let me know how effective this is. Also, I want you to look back at your past manifestations and reflect upon how many times you've manifested something while accidentally also changing assumptions of other people, because it's quite frequent given the data that I have, not even just for myself, but of many other people. And there's proof in this, right? Like when I give imaginal scenes to people, there always involves some level of this, and it's always successful, right? It's always successful. So reflect there. Also, lastly, please, if you have not watched the list method video, you must be doing this. We have to be doing this together as a group, right? I didn't talk about it as much, but I'm going to have a link in the description here. It's a very amazing way to manifest. It takes the power out of the content creator and into the hands of the manifester. If you want to prove how fast, how powerful, how easy it is for you to manifest your greatest desires, start that 14-day exercise immediately and comment in the description below also with your results. Let's keep this going. Let's keep going with this. Keep sharing your results. And guys, that is what I have for you today on this. I just needed to record and share this as soon as I figured it out, really. Download the worksheet, download the data here in the description as well, in the comments. I usually post it on a pinned comment, and share your success stories. It changes lives. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you're excited about this like me. I can't wait to finish this app and present it to the world as well, so that you guys can utilize this. And it doesn't take me 10 hours to run a single experiment and to rack my brain when there's an error. But I'll see you soon. Thank you so much for being here.